Yikes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Larcine. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. And I want to thank Jason and Mary and the committee for the invitation to come here. It's a real honor and a privilege to get to be here. And I want to thank Patty. She's been my hostess and picked me up from the airport early this morning. And I have seen everything there is to see in Redding. I have been everywhere. And I've seen Shasta, Mount whatever and ever, and the snow, and every restaurant, and she's been great about a history lesson. She even gave me something to read. I guess there's going to be a test later about the frigging dam and where it was all built. She took me to where they got the concrete to build the dam, okay? So I am versed and I'm ready to go. So, but she has been absolutely fabulous. We had lunch with Alicia today, and it was just nice. I mean, it still blows my mind. You know, my mom does not like that I participate in Al-Anon. She thinks it's terrible that I tell my story from the podium to total strangers. She's like, you know, so somebody's going to pick you up from the airport and you don't even know who they are. And maybe they're bad drivers. What are you going to do if they're a bad driver? I mean, it's just, it goes on and on and on. And so, and why I come to Al-Anon, another reason. I am so grateful to be here. And because you guys have taught me how to be loving and kind no matter what. And I'm here to tell you my life is tremendous because of that lesson. And I have a good time with everything now, and I am grateful for that because that was not the case when I got here whatsoever. And anyway, it's a real honor to be here. You know, it's always a little scary, you know, when you're the Al-Anon speaker at an AA conference. I liken it, you know, it's like being the corpse at an Irish wake. Nobody expects you to say much, but they can't have the party without you, you know. So, you know, it's just like, oh, got to have the Al-Anon speaker, you know. Usually I'm talking during the golf tournament or something like that. I'm kind of used to that. It's not a big deal. But it's always still really a little bit, you know, you know, I get nervous. That never goes away. I have a friend in AA. She taught me the good prayer. I say it every time just before I get up here. She taught me how to say, you know, when you get up here, just, God, please don't let me suck. And and that's what I got, you know. I mean, and you want to know what's going on, you know. And I listen, you know. I listen to everybody, you know, because there's just so much hope and so much wisdom in this room. And I never listened to anybody before. I thought I was the one with all the answers. I thought I knew everything that there was to know about what everybody should do and how they should be doing it. And what I can tell you today is that's how I've been affected by the family disease of alcoholism. And that was not a fun life to live. And I am so grateful for this. I'm so grateful that Al-Anon has opened my eyes, my heart, my mind, you know, to other options. In our 12 and 12, there was a line when I was new, and it said, did you ever think that there was a different way to do things? And my immediate answer was, hell no. It's my way. I mean, you know, why would there be a different way? But again, one more time, you know, a sponsor taking me through the steps and doing this, you know, has showed me that there are so many different ways to go. And when you're open to that, I mean, the world is just really absolutely so much more fun, just so much more enjoyable. And like I say, I am so grateful to be a member of Al-Anon and to be here with you this evening. I'm just going to jump into it, a little bit about, you know, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like for me today, tell my story in a general way as we are directed to do. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My dad was a master sergeant in the Army, so that meant when I was born, I've always had automatic rank because I'm the oldest, you know, and so, you know, and I like that. I like the military lifestyle. I like rules and regulations. My dad raised his family just like he treated his, you know, the guys that he had in his platoon in the Army. You know, we had little Army bunk beds. We had Army blankets on our bunk beds. We had footlockers at the end of our bunk beds, and my dad did room inspection, and that's where we stored our gear. And my dad flipped quarters on a bed, and you know, and I remember as a tiny kid standing attention at the end of my footlocker, waiting for my dad to salute me, and I would salute him right back. And he took great pleasure in taking me to his platoon, and then having me show grown men how to make an Army bed regulation, and I loved it. I mean, my dad was the alcoholic in my family, but I mean, you know, and again, how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism, but I got their attention, and I was always really proud of it, and you know, and the military upbringing that I've had, you know, I mean, I grew up with duty, honor, country, you know, there's a lot of issues with my dad, but I'm always going to be grateful for that. And again, when I came to Al-Anon, I had absolutely no gratitude for my dad whatsoever. And again, Al-Anon has showed me, that there's, if you want to look for stuff, it is actually there. But the family disease of alcoholism, its intention is for you to live in as much misery as you possibly can. And never see any good in anything that's going on, because that's what the family disease of alcoholism means to do to a family. But anyway, I grew up with this dad, very, very severe disciplinarian. I learned early on, don't give the sergeant any crap. Just do the best you can, straight A student. You must win every game you play, because my dad had all those rules. There is no surrender. You are victorious. If you have to cheat, kick, bite, it doesn't matter. You will come out victorious. You will be the victor. And, and I mean, I'm, still today I have to not play games because of that. Okay. I mean, it's a work in progress, and sometimes people will really walk away. Larcine is just Monopoly, but, it's whatever. I will kick you under the table. I will steal your cards, steal your Monopoly money, and not good. I'm working on it. And, but anyway, my dad was just this real severe disciplinarian. Like I say, my dad was alcoholic. I had absolutely no idea my dad was alcoholic as a little kid. It's not like you're born and you get a brochure saying, hey, this is what's going on. I had no idea. We always lived in military housing. We always lived with other military families. And, there were lots of dads that were drunk. There was lots of, the MPs came and took them all away, practically every evening. There was just always something that was going on. There were lots of moms that had black eyes and broken arms, and no one ever said anything about that, because I'm talking about in the 50s and, and it's just, you wouldn't do anything at all to endanger your husband's, military, things that were going on. You never got reported. You always slipped and fell. It's just, that's the military way. And so I had no idea, that my dad was an alcoholic. My dad drank every day. And really all I got to learn from that was that, I learned early on not to ask questions. If you've grown up in an alcoholic home like I did, one of the first things that goes out the window was any kind of verbal communication anyway. And, but I learned early on, you just don't ask questions. But I need to know stuff. I mean, I'm a little kid. I'm curious. I want to know things. So I developed this habit early on. My sponsor calls it information from nowhere, because that's really what it is. I just think crap up. Lands here, fact for me, and off I run with it. Now, I don't mean I just randomly fantasize about. I'll watch what's going on, and I will make my best educated guess at what's going on. And then I function my life from there. And the thing is that, 9 times out of 10, I'm really wrong about what's going on, but I'm just making the best guess I can as a little kid. And I took that behavior into adulthood. Again, how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism, because I believe the disease of alcoholism, all we get to do is survive. It's just grasping from one day to the next day to the next day. There's no living involved in any of that. It's just getting by without getting a beating, without getting hit, without getting yelled at, without getting in trouble. And my dad was just a really tough guy. I used to wonder as a little kid, though, why someone would go to all the trouble to marry someone and have kids just to yell at them and scream at them and make them feel bad about who they are. I could never figure out what the heck that was about. But, but again, I didn't attach it to my dad's drinking because all the guys drank. Everybody got drunk. They got drunk a lot. Like I say, the MPs were over all the time. I just thought it's what dads do. And my dad was very unhappy having girl children. He got 3 girls right out of the gate. And this was terrible. It was awful, and he always made us feel bad about being girls and what a disappointment we were because we were girls. And, and what I know today, too, going to Al-Anon and lots of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, is I just got a lot of misinformation from a man with a lot of misinformation. And my dad was very physical with us. I mean, but I'd much rather take a beating from my dad than the verbal stuff, because he could be just so nasty and all that stuff was always really hard for me. And then one time, my sponsor told me one more time after I was talking about my terrible childhood, she told me, what, Larcine, you just grew up in a normal alcoholic home. That's what goes on in a normal alcoholic home. And I was really angry with her when she first told me that. But I'm here to tell you, everything that my sponsor has ever told me, it's been to help me recover in this program. And in reality, when I've heard many, many other people think, let me tell you, there's hundreds, thousands of people that had much, much worse childhood than I did. much, much worse and suffered much, much more than I ever could dream of suffering. And, and it's just normal behavior in an alcoholic home. And when she told me that, it downsized it. Because left to my imagination, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. It never lets me see things truthfully or whatever. I see things out of fear. I see things out of anxiety, because, again, how I am fed by the family disease of alcoholism. And, my dad... when I was really, really new in Al-Anon, I went to lots and lots of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're new in Al-Anon, and even if you're not new, I can't recommend that enough. I still go to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous all the time. It says in our Al-Anon literature that we should learn all we can about the disease of alcoholism. And I know no better place to learn that than in open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember one time, one of my very, very first AA meetings, the speaker at the podium that night, the AA talker, the speaker, he just talked all night about alcoholism, the family disease. And he described alcoholism, the family disease, as having a rhinoceros in your living room, but everybody pretends it's a coffee table. And if I have to describe the house that I grew up in, boy, that was the house that I grew up in. Because my dad, we'd be at dinner, and my mom, she could tell my dad was ready to have one of these alcoholic explosions. And, of course, if you're in an alcoholic situation, again, no communication whatsoever. So my mom couldn't say to us, nobody do anything because your dad's ready to blow up. So my mom would speak to us facially. So if you're sitting at the dinner table and mom's like, you know what that means. And, I don't even have to tell you. If you've grown up in that house, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we would know, look down, don't talk, don't make any noise, don't ask to have anything passed to you. But if you have an alcoholic that wants to explode, nothing is going to stop that from happening. And some kid might have scraped their knife on their plate, or a pea may have rolled off or something, and my dad would go nuts. He would go ballistic. Dinner would go flying. Everybody'd get hit. Everybody'd have to go to bed. It could be 5:30 in the afternoon. Everybody goes to bed. My mom, the kids, the dog. It's the way it goes down in our house. And then the next morning, I would get up, creeping down the hallway to go in the kitchen to have breakfast before I went to school in the morning. And there would be my dad drinking his breakfast beer. And it would be, good morning, what do you want for breakfast? And no one ever said, gee whiz, what was that about last night, Dad? Gee whiz, how come you had to hit everybody? How come you had to break everything? Because the rhinoceros just went, back to being a coffee table again. Because that's the hope of the family, that today it's going to be different. It's going to stop today, Maybe that was it, and again, the hope that we have in our family that gets dashed, as time goes on. And if I have to describe the house that I grew up in, that's exactly the house that I grew up in, exactly how that AA speaker spoke about the family disease of alcoholism. I need to let you know that my dad ended up dying when he was 55 years old. He died the death that they talk about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, total insanity and death. I can't even tell you the last words my dad said to me. They were so violent, so vulgar, I wouldn't even begin to repeat them from this podium. But I always say the last words my dad said, when in reality what I know today, again, from going to lots of meetings of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and my Al-Anon program, is those are really the last words my dad's alcoholism said to me. Because now when I look back and I think about my dad, and my dad was over 6 foot tall, dark hair, and and he was a very robust man. And but laying in that hospital bed, heck, if he was 100 pounds, I sunk in his head, and just before alcoholism took his life, spitting out the last crap words it could, one more time to hurt the family. It was the disease of alcoholism that was talking to me, not my dad. It was just, it took the life of a man and then spit out the last crap it could before it did. And I'd like to tell you that my sisters and I were really sad that my dad had passed away. We were not. My sisters and I went in the hallway and we were like, when the doctors came out and said he'd finally died, we were like, ding dong, the witch is dead. And I don't tell you this story because I'm proud of it. I'm telling you this story because this is where I really believe the family disease of alcoholism will take a family. That you'd rather somebody die than live in that hell one more day. And again, how we were affected by the disease of alcoholism. And, and I tell you this story because, my sisters and I really did believe that when my dad died, the reign of terror was over. And maybe that part of it was because my dad was always threatening. He was always very physical, always very verbal. And we were scared to death of him. He was always going to kill us. That was always his thing. And kill us, kill our husbands, kill our kids. And again, I don't know where all that garbage comes from him. But again, he had alcoholic parents, and and he has his own thing, and people have told me, my dad was a Korean War veteran. He was a World War II veteran. He was a Purple Heart recipient, and I've had veterans tell me, it was post-traumatic, syndrome and all that, traumatic syndrome and all that stuff, and that may well have been, but all I know is I'm a kid, and my dad likes to hit me, and he drinks a lot, so I mean, none of that means nothing to me when you're a little kid. And that's just, again, how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. Now, as an adult, I can look back, but I never cared about whatever his reason was before. And so anyway, and my sisters and I really believed it was over. But I'm here to tell you what my sisters ended up finding out, and I ended up finding out, is all that happened was that the alcoholic died. But the family disease of alcoholism was alive and well in me and my sisters. You may need an alcoholic to kick it off, but the feelings and everything else that goes along with the family disease of alcoholism was untouched by my father's death. And this is because nothing changed for us. Now, when my dad died, he died in October of 1981. I started coming to Al-Anon in June of 1981. But I'd only been coming for a few months. So June to October, I wasn't anywhere near loving, forgiving. None of that crap was on the radar whatsoever. I was still checking it all out, and fumbling my way through. So I wasn't, but I had a sponsor, and I was doing the deal here. And I did a lot of work on my dad. A lot of work, a lot of writing. I did, all my step stuff and, inventories, all the stuff that my sponsor asked me to do. And it didn't seem to matter how much I did. Somebody would say something or look at me or just whatever would happen, and it would remind me of some humiliation, some horrible thing my dad had done, and I would just get so angry. Just so angry all over again. And I don't know how you are, but when I'm really pissed off and angry, I like to take that home and share it with my husband and my children, and the people I care and love about the most, because that's the family disease of alcoholism. I don't know what that's about, but that's definitely it. And I didn't want to be doing that. I'm coming to Al-Anon. I'm hearing you guys share. I want what you have. I want to be living that life. I desperately do. What am I doing wrong? Why is it not happening for me? But this is a process. There's steps to be taken. I'm really a firm believer that, you can't think your way into good living. You have to live your way into good thinking. And when you're exposed to the disease of alcoholism, it's going to take a while to get, living with the right kind of thinking. And it sounds great, and it's easy to read in the books, and it's easy to read in the literature. And if that's all Al-Anon was about, was just learning the stuff, then we would just have to read the books, and that would be the class, check it off, and we would be done. But for me, this is really absolutely positively a way of life. How I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism, I believe, for me, hangs as much as drinking does for the alcoholic. If I do not maintain a program, that keeps me in good stead, then I am subject to that. It's just always right here. It's just waiting for me to, let my guard down and not be working my program to the best of my ability. And I know it because there's all kinds of reasons, which I will go into later and show you, why my sponsor thinks I'm still a very, very difficult person. And this many, many, many years later. And but anyway, but I would just, I would have these, it was just awful. And I remember going to my very first sponsor, Jeannie, I had for the first 9 years I was in Al-Anon until she died. And, and I can't say enough about sponsorship. I just absolutely can't. It's absolutely been what has absolutely saved my life. And I'm so, so grateful to the two sponsors that I have had, since I've been in the program of Al-Anon. But my first sponsor, Jeannie, I remember going to her and, going, I'm doing this stuff and I'm still getting mad. I'm still yelling at the kids and screaming at my husband and blah, blah, blah. And she said, every time this happens and I get all mad about my dad again. And, she said to me, Larcine, you've done the step work. There's no question about that. She says, but, Al-Anon isn't about a problem. Al-Anon is about the solution. We know what the problem is, but we have to get you on a solution. And she says, I'm going to give you an assignment and you're not going to like it. And she always prefaced everything she told me with, and you're not going to like it. Because I have never liked one weenie stupid thing they have ever told me to do in Al-Anon. Because they say dumb stuff here. I'm sorry. I remember being at those first meetings. My life is falling apart around me. And this is what I get. Let go and let God. Easy does it. One day at a time. I'm just like, Joy, why didn't I think of that? But in reality, and I would think it was just the stupidest, tritest, come on, what are you saving the good stuff for? I need the answers now, not this crapola. And, and again, and that was my attitude, but I'm here to tell you this many years later, The reality is that's the answer to all of our problems. But how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism is when things are going on in my life and I am in the midst of it, how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism magnifies those problems. That's what it does. Because it wants you to think you don't have a choice. It wants you to think there is no solution. It wants you to be helpless and hopeless. That's what the family disease of alcoholism wants. So one little thing happens, and I don't know how you guys are, but boy, I escalate it, within 10 seconds of thought, until everybody's dead, and it's my fault. That's just where my head goes, even still today. But again, if what I've learned in Al-Anon and what my sponsors always made me do is whenever's going on, what is happening right this moment? Not what you think may happen because this happened, what is happening right now? What is my responsibility? Do I have responsibility? Is there an action for me to take? Then what action is it? Because what Al-Anon does over and over for me is it just makes me look at the truth. What is going on right now? Not what you're afraid of, what may happen. What's going on right at this moment. And when I'm able to do that, guess what? Easy does it. Let go and let God. One day at a time works every flaming time. Every flaming time. Again, but I've got to watch where I'm going to run with it because how I'm affected to this day from the disease, from the family disease of alcoholism. So anyway, so she said, you're not going to like it. So the assignment she gave me is I want you to go home and I want you to think about a good thing your father has done for you. And my initial reaction is there's absolutely no such thing. Are you kidding me? I'm supposed to think up a good thing my dad has done for me when my very first remembrance on the face of the planet is fear at my father's hands. That's my very first memory of being alive. And I'm supposed to think about something good my dad has done for me. And again, see how I'm shaking my head and doing my thing? Because that's the family disease of alcoholism, how I'm affected by it, why I don't have to do it, why this doesn't apply to me. The barriers go up right away. But one thing I learned right out of the gate that I really believe was God's blessing to me in my life is when I went to those first meetings, I heard people share that if you're not willing to do something different, how can you possibly expect anything to be different? And for whatever reason, that's made sense to me, and I've always been willing. So I went home that day willing. Now, mind you, I'm only ever this much willing because I'm not easy about it. I'm not like, ooh, I'll do it. No. We're going to discuss this. I'm looking for loopholes. I'm always looking for loopholes. And But I was this much willing, and I went home, and I don't know how long it was, a week or 2 weeks, and I remembered that my dad taught me how to drive, and if you're going to live in Southern California, marry an alcoholic of your own and track that sucker down, it's a skill you simply must have, okay? It's just you got to have it. And I am talking about tracking alcoholics down way before GPS, no cell phones, nothing. Just what you had up here, finding people that don't want to be found. And I'm talking about really tracking those suckers down. And then what do you do when you catch them? I mean, it's a mess. And just a big mess. But anyway, so he taught me how to drive. And I didn't think my sponsor would be happy with that answer. And again, if you don't have a sponsor, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, sponsors are like having your own personal rooting section. They want you to do well. They want you to do well because it makes them look good. You look good. It's just like a win-win situation. I don't know why you wouldn't go that way. But anyway, but I remember going to Jeannie and going, I thought of a good thing my dad has done for me. And my first sponsor, Jeannie, she's a little tiny Dutch lady, real thick Dutch accent. She was a clapper, which irritated the bejeebies out of me. Because every time I did anything good, she'd go, which I just thought was just so condescending. I mean, it just would irritate me to no end, which I think made her even do it more. But so I thought, and I think, okay, I'll give her the answer. We'll see how happy she is about this one. And so I said, he taught me how to drive. My gosh, you'd think I'd come up with the cure for cancer. She was ecstatic, over the moon. Because again, it was my rookie year in Al-Anon, my first assignment from my sponsor, and I didn't know that when you got an assignment that there would be part 2, which is way harder than part 1, let me tell you, every time. And now part 2 of my assignment was every time I thought about something my dad had done. Every time, I got really angry again. And I tell alcoholics all the time, if you've ever had a drunk father show up at a school function when you're getting an award, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization just isn't reserved for the alcoholic. And my dad was real big on embarrassing us and humiliating us at every opportunity, it seemed to me. But she said whenever I thought about those times that I was just to replace that negative thought with this positive one. And, she said, Larcine, your father died with all of his children being grateful he was dead, happy about it. And you have children. Is that what you want to have happen to you? Do you really believe that your dad wanted that to happen to him? Or can you believe that he was a sick alcoholic and he died the horrible death of alcoholism, with his children being grateful he was dead? And do you need to punish anybody more than that? And again, and I don't mean to tell you that I grew up with this hellacious dad who hit us, made us feel bad about being girls and all the other garbage he dumped on us. And then I came to Al-Anon and they gave me the stupid sticky assignment, and I did it, and now it's rainbows and butterflies up my gazoo. That is absolutely not what happened. What happened that day is my sponsor gave me probably the most precious gift I think that's in Al-Anon, and that's the gift of forgiveness. And it says in our Al-Anon literature that forgiveness is no favor. We do it for nobody but ourselves. And see, I always thought if I forgave my dad, I was letting him off the hook. And I wasn't going to let him off the hook because it wasn't right. And Al-Anon has never told me that it was right. It's never told me that. But what Al-Anon has taught me is that, is that the truth is the truth. And I really don't believe that my dad wanted to have kids just so we would all hate him and be glad that he was dead. I can't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that my dad really did suffer from the disease of alcoholism, and it ate him up and spit him up and left nothing left. And that's the deal. And I don't need to punish anybody more than that, because who's really being punished then is me. And then my children, and then whatever. And again, we talk about that merry-go-round of alcoholism that goes round and round and round and round, because I can't find forgiveness in my heart from a man who died, with his children, being glad that he was dead. I don't need to do that anymore. I am so, so grateful for that. And so anyway, when I was... When my dad got out of the Army when we were teenagers, and up until this point, we'd always lived like on the East Coast and in Europe and stuff. And when my dad got out of the Army, we moved to California, and this was in the '60s. And now you have to know how regimented my life was up until this point. I mean, it's always military bases, always military families, and then we, rules and regulations up the gazoo. And then we moved to California in the '60s. Not a lot of nothing. Rules and regulations were not happening in California at all. It was like moving to another planet for me. And us girls are now getting old enough to date. We're teenagers. My dad had rules and regulations about, us dating. We had to bring home these little weenie guys, and we would bring home these guys, and they'd have to meet my dad. And, my dad, even though now ex-master sergeant, they never lose the voice. Okay. That never, ever goes away. And, and he's towering over these little weenie guys, and he's giving them the master sergeant drill, where are you going? What time are you going to be home? And then he tells them what part of their anatomy he will remove if we are not returned in the virginal condition of which we left the house in the first place. So it's like impossible to get a second date at my house. I mean, it just never, ever happens. One guy, he was gone. I think he peed himself on the way out the door. I mean, he was toast. And I know my dad can be a very intimidating guy, but the fact that he always had a firearm or a hand grenade in his hand never helped the situation either. But see, as a little kid, I always grew up with that. My dad was always going to blow up the Helms Bakery man or the mailman or the neighbor. And again, how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism. It's like I love in our Al-Anon literature where it says, like, every good sense tells us there's something wrong with the alcoholics drinking and thinking, but we still hide how we feel and what we know. And I liken growing up with the disease of alcoholism is like having a bowl of crap in front of you. Now, I don't think there's anybody in this room that'll eat a whole entire bowl of crap at one sitting. But I'm here to tell you, growing up in an alcoholic home, you'll choke down a teaspoon of that every day if it'll just make it be quiet, if it'll just stop that insanity, and again. So my dad having a hand grenade or a gun all the time, when it happens day after day after day, it becomes normal behavior for me, because I have to rationalize and justify it because I live in that house. And again, how we're affected by the family disease of alcoholism, when every good sense tells us that there's something wrong with this, I have to rationalize and justify it because I live in it. I can't let the neighborhood kids say stuff about my dad. I can't. It's not allowed. I just can't have it, because then I can't have that. Then I can't justify how I live there. And that's how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. So anyway, I met my husband when I was 17 years old. I should have known there was something wrong with him, because my dad liked him right away. And that had never, ever happened, ever before. And my husband is almost 8 years older than I am. And And so, I'm 17, he's like 23, and he's been married once before, has a kid, back living with his mom and dad, which should have been clue number 2 to me that there was something wrong with him, but that went right over my head. And we were on this date with this other couple, and we stopped at a liquor store, and he'd asked me what I like to drink. Well, I am 17 years old, buddy. There are drinking laws in the state of California, and I proceeded to tell him what the drinking laws were in the state of California, and I am an underage minor, buddy, so you better watch out. And I know he heard what he still hears today when he doesn't want to hear what I'm saying. He heard blah, 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 blah. Because he went in and got a gallon of Red Mountain wine, if nothing else, to impress me with his wine knowledge, because I know nothing about drinking or anything else. And we were with this other couple, and we went back to this house, and we played this game. It's called Pass Out. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it or not. It's a legitimate board game. You can still buy it on eBay and all that stuff. And like I say, I don't drink because it's against the law to drink. But I told you I got to win every game I play. And there is no way to win a drinking game if you're not drinking, okay? It just can't happen. So I had probably a half a glass of that god-awful wine, and guess who had all the rest of the wine? And he was pretty drunk. I mean, pretty drunk. And let me tell you, boy, I've got a list about what my life is going to be like. You can cut the hate in the house I'm growing up with a knife. My parents hate each other. They absolutely despise each other. And boy, I've got a list about what my life is going to be like. And I'm going to get out of that house as quick as I can. And I'm going to marry a guy who's going to love me so much. He's going to want nothing but girl children. We're going to have 9 or 10 girl children. He's going to be happy with that. And he's not going to be drinking, because I'm 17 years old now. I know my dad's a drunk. I'm not having that going on. And now here I am on this date with this guy. And what I still remember about that date, to this day, is what a fabulous time I had. He was so funny, so much fun, and he made me feel good. I have never laughed so hard in my entire life. And when it was time for him to drive me home, even though he was drunk as a skunk, he had his hands in the proper 3 o'clock position on the steering wheel, so I'm thinking he's got his deal. And again, information from nowhere lands here, becomes fact for me, because I will stand toe-to-toe with any alcoholic when it comes to rationalizing and justifying my behavior as much as any other alcoholic, because I want what I want, and I will think up a way for it to work for me. So now here I desperately want to go out with this guy again, but number 1 on my list is no drinking, and he's obviously a drinker, and a hippie guy too, because he, long beard, long hair, tattoos, no underwear. Another clue, they're an alcoholic, just in case you're wondering. It should be in our literature as far as I'm concerned, but it's not yet. But I really, really want to go out with him again. And so, and again, if you think hard enough, you'll think up whatever you need to do to justify your behavior. I am proof of that. And so, no problem. Because you see, when my dad drinks, my dad wants to hit you and yell at you and make you feel bad about who you are. When my husband's drinking, he just wants to kiss you and hug you and tell you how pretty you are. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can work with that, okay? That's got the potential that only we see in alcoholics. No one else sees it but us. We see what they could be if they would only do what we tell them to. And so Butch and I started dating exclusively from that point on. It was hard for me to date Butch, basically because he couldn't remember my name. But you can't let a little thing like that stop you from going out with an alcoholic. That should be the hardest thing, right? And he'd call me up all the time, Lorraine, Larcine, all kinds of crap. And, but he knows my name now pretty well. But and I know my name is strange and it's different. My dad named me Larcine, okay? And the story behind my dad naming me Larcine is because I wasn't a boy. But my dad was very, very proud of his Scottish heritage. And because I wasn't a boy, but because I was firstborn, he gave me this he told me, I'm naming you Larcine because it's the name of a town in Scotland. I'm very, very upset that I couldn't name you after me. I hate the fact that you're a girl, but because you're firstborn, I'm going to name you Larcine. It's the name of a town in Scotland. I am proud of Scotland. You should always be really proud of that. I always have been. I've been taught that. It's the very first story I ever remember my dad telling me. And I've always been really proud of it. Now, fast forward, my dad is dead. I'm in Al-Anon a while. And I got curious about Larcine, Scotland. And again, before Google, computers, cell phones, you wanted information, you went to buildings called libraries to go get it. And so I went to the library to look up Larcine, Scotland, and I could find nothing. Absolutely nothing. And of course, I'm upset about it. But, again, it's a little weenie library in our town. So I go to the reference librarian. And, she goes, and can you look up Larcine, Scotland for me and tell me what information you can find? What do you know about it? That's it. It's the name of a town in Scotland. That's all I got. She said, come back in 2 weeks and we'll see what we can find. So she sent it to the big downtown LA library, I guess the thing. And I came back 2 weeks later and no such place as Larcine, Scotland. And now I'm really pissed, okay? Because I'm working Al-Anon. I did the whole freaking forgiveness thing, and all this stuff. And now here's my dad stabbing me from the grave, I've done all this, and now I get this, And again, and believe it or not, I don't usually mask when I'm upset. And so anyway, and word gets out, I'm really losing it. And a friend of mine that's in AA goes to Scotland every year because he golfs there. He's like the golf mecca of the universe. He goes, I go to Scotland every year. I got a lot of friends in Scotland. Maybe there was Larcine, Scotland like thousands of years ago. It's a really old country. Let me check it out before you go whack-a-doodle, okay? So he goes off to Scotland. He comes back 2 weeks later. No one has ever heard of Larcine, Scotland in Scotland, okay? So now I am pissed. I am changing my name. Bite me, Dad. I am done. And I happened to be at my husband's big AA speaker meeting that night, and a friend of ours walks up to me, and he goes, Larcine, you're not going to believe this, but I found out that Larcine is a Scottish word. Like, you're kidding me. He goes, what does it mean? He's go, it is Scottish for father was drunk when daughter was born, so daughter got a weird name. And... okay. Now, I know it's not true, okay? Okay, I knew that right when he told me that. But what he went on to tell me is he said, Larcine, what I believe is, he goes, I don't know if your dad was drunk that night. I don't know if he wrote it down wrong. I don't know what the heck was going on. He goes, but I'm here to tell you I'm alcoholic like your dad was alcoholic. And again, I don't know how drunk he was or what happened that night or where the mistake was. He goes, but I'm here to tell you that I believed your dad believed when he named you Larcine that it was the name of a town in Scotland. And just because it's not wrapped the way that you want it to be wrapped doesn't make it any less of a gift. When you think about it. And I'm here to tell you, this has been my whole history in Al-Anon. Because left to my own devices, anything that happens, I just tear it up. It's terrible, it's awful, I hate it. I hate my life, I hate this, blah, 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 I'm not doing this anymore. But I take it to you, and all that ever happens here is you just show me a different way to look at it. And when you show me a different way to look at it, time and time again, I get the shot at a good life if I so choose to take it. That's what's offered to every single person in this room every single day. It's just the opportunity to take a shot at a good life. But I'm the one that's got to take the shot. They're putting it all in front of me. Am I going to pick it up or am I going to be pissed? And I went home that night and I really, really thought about it. And I really can't believe that my dad went to such a ridiculous length so that I would one day find out that my name was not the name of a town in Scotland, so I would be heartbroken. I just don't believe it. I don't. I believe that he believed that it was the name of a town in Scotland. So now I proudly have my license plates, because it's 7 letters. Larcine is on my license plate of my car, which will make you a better driver, trust me. But a couple of years ago, my husband got me license plate holders that say it's the name of a town in Scotland. And and I said, and I'm not kidding, I have had 2 total strangers walk up to me and tell me they have been there, okay? I'm just telling you. You cannot make this stuff up. It's just like, and it's fine, But anyway, so Butch and I are dating. He's having a hard time with my name, and and my husband. Out of the gate, I know he's drinking. He drinks a lot. He does a lot of drugs too. He doesn't hide it from me. He doesn't pretend he doesn't do it. He's a disappearing drunk. He's a blackout drunk, and he's still a fun guy. I still love being with him. Whenever he does show up, I can't tell you how many times I've been stood up by him, and all that was always there in front of me. Yet when I came to Al-Anon, if you would have said, Larcine, did you have any idea that your husband was drinking like he was, that he was doing drugs? I would have said, absolutely not, because I'm not going to take responsibility for that. It's real important that I be a victim, though I'll act like I'm the real responsible person. Again, it's how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. If you call me on the truth, I can't do it. I can't, because it's how I'm affected. I can't look bad in this situation. He's the guy. He's the one doing the stuff, And we dated for a couple years, and we had a lot of fun. And then what ended up happening after 2 years of dating is that I got pregnant. Don't care if it's a big deal for you. Back in 1974, it was a big, big deal for me. And then when our life got really, really bad behind my husband's drinking and using, I thought, well, that's because God has punished me because I've broken the big rule The big rule there, that's on me. That's why my life sucks now. And I'm here to tell you that my experience has been, and that of many, many people I've heard in both AA and Al-Anon, is that there's not a punishing God here. God wants us all to be happy, joyous, and free. If you want to know what God's plan for you is, it's to be happy, joyous, and free. But it's not that you're just going to get whacked that way. It's not the way it is. It's what do you do to honor what God's will for you is. And for me, it's a change of attitude. That's what I have learned to do here. If I want to honor that God wants me to be happy, joyous, and free, then I got to ask myself every single day, what am I doing to be happy, joyous, and free? Because there are tools that are available to me that can make that happen, but it requires work on my part. It requires me changing my attitude. It requires me looking at things differently so that I can have the shot at a good life. Instead of that focused, negative, family disease of alcoholism point of view that always wants me just to narrow it down to it's not my fault. Someone else is responsible for my happiness. And so anyway, we ended up getting married a month after our son was born. So if you ask me if I was pregnant when I got married, no, I wasn't, because I wasn't. There was a baby there, but you figure it out, not my problem. And up until that point, I'd never talked to Butch about his drug use or his drinking or nothing. But the day after we got married, I sat him in the kitchen chair and I told him the rules and regulations of the marriage. And this is how it's going down, buddy. We're getting a babysitter once a month. And then you can go party and do whatever. But other than that, you're working, you're bringing home a paycheck. I got a plan. This is how it's going down. Do you understand? And he sat in the kitchen chair and did this, which I took as affirmative, but he was just so drunk and loaded. His head was just doing this thing. And he heard the blah, blah, blah again. Because, what happened was 3 days into our marriage, the third night, he didn't come home all night long. And this is a huge violation of the rules and regulations that I have sat down. And I am here to tell you, my husband begged for the silent treatment. He never got it, not one time, boy. He would walk in the door. I was always like a little dog, just He jokes that I talk as fast as I do because I only had so much time from when he came home to when he passed out for me to tell him everything it was that I wanted to tell him, because by God, he was going to hear it. God, absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. And curse, I don't even know where I learned that language from, which is a lie because I learned it all from my dad. But for whatever reason, again, information from nowhere, Lance here becomes fact for me, because I am sure if I curse with the right, mothers and effers in the right order, that he's going to have some spiritual awakening. I don't know. Where does that come from? Why do you think that's going to fix anybody? Because again, it's the desperation, just the complete desperation that I will be and yell and scream. And that was the person that I was. I was always insane that way behind all of that. And, one night he came home, and my husband was always a very easygoing guy. I'm nothing like my dad at all. They were both alcoholic, there was no doubt, but the complete opposite personality. And he comes home one night after he's been out all night, 3 o'clock in the morning. He's shaking me, waking me, demanding to have his dinner. He'd never done anything like that before. It startled me. It scared me. And I remember I went into the kitchen and I'd made this Mexican casserole that called for 1 jalapeno pepper, but of course I had a whole can of those things in the refrigerator. So after I fully woke up and I remembered who he was dealing with, I took every single one of those jalapeno peppers and I stuffed him into that casserole, and he ate it. His mouth must have been on flame and fire, and then he did what I wanted him to do, and that was go into the bathroom and puke his brains out. Because then I went in the bedroom and I'm just laughing and giggling in my pillow, because I don't know how you feel, but when my alcoholic throws up, it's wonderful. It's just such a great feeling, and again, how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism, because that's what I want to do. I'm getting hurt, and I'm going to hurt you back. That's how I was raised. That's what I know how to do. That's the only thing I know how to do. I can't recognize, that there's a problem or anything else. All I know is, and this is what it turns into in a very, very short amount of time into our marriage, and it gets progressively worse and progressively worse. And, and if my husband were here and you ask him to describe his drinking, his word would be pig. That's his word, not mine. But an example of it is one day, I get this call from the scum of the earth people, his friends, and these are the drug dealers. And my husband is over at their house so drunk and so loaded that if I do not come and get him, the drug dealers, are going to call the police. That's the condition he's in. And so I put on my cape, off I go to rescue him like I always do. And, baby in the car. And we get there, and I'll never forget, he's in the drug dealer's bushes. They've kicked him out of the house. He's just flopping around in their bushes. And the drug dealers are looking between the Venetian blinds to see if I've arrived to get him. And I got him up, and I got him in the car, and I drove home. And our son was still a baby. And I took him in the house and put him in his crib and came back to get my husband. But he'd gotten out of the car and fallen in the street, cracked his head on the curb, blood gushing out all over. I'd like to tell you I'm concerned about him. I am not, but I certainly don't want anybody to see him. But he's 180 pounds of wet washcloth. There's no picking the guy up. So I grab him by the ankles. I heave him up over the curb, and I'm dragging him down the sidewalk, little trickle of blood following right behind, kind of like a little snail trail kind of a thing going on. And why we call these people normies, I have not a clue. But here I am, dragging a guy by the ankles down the sidewalk, bleeding from the head, and this guy driving by says, "Are you having a problem?" That's what the normie people think. And I'm like, yes, my husband's fallen and he can't get up. And it was the truth for once. And so anyway, and again, and my head, I am military. I am just, when things happen, I am a list maker, boy. Boom, 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 boom. And that's what's got to happen. I can only cope if I do my list and check it off, check it off, check it off. Head injury, he has to be upstairs because that's where the bed is. You got a head injury, you got to be in the bed. So not only do I have to get him in the house, I have to get him up a flight of stairs and into the bed. And as we're going up the flight of the stairs, he and I are yelling and screaming at each other, as we usually are. And Mr. Good Samaritan now no longer wishes to participate, okay? This has gone way beyond what he wanted to be helpful neighbor guy. And so he was out of the house like a shot. Butch is on the bed, big puddle of blood. I'd like to tell you I am concerned about him. I am not. It's always been my plan that he die. Someone once said to me, well, why didn't you just divorce him and let him win? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. No. Yes, he dies. I'm a young widow. It's beautiful. It's just, it's a win-win situation. And, and now there's this big puddle of blood. Now, I want him to die, but I don't want my fingerprints, and I'm the only one in the house, so I'm not going to jail behind this crap, So I called 911. I was hysterical. They didn't know what was going on. Hook and ladder truck, ambulance, all this stuff. The police are there, and I'm in the bedroom with the baby. Oh, my husband. The police come in and they go, Mrs. Gantner, your husband says he injured himself because you pushed him down this flight of stairs. Now, of course, I hadn't done that. And this is a very severe, accusation. Now, in reality, I'm the normal. I'm the sane person. I am the non-drinking person in our family. You think I would have a moment of clarity? No. I just got red hot angry because that's what I do. They could take my child away from me. I don't give a you know what. But so I told those police I didn't push him down, but if you'll prop him up, I'll be happy to push him down in front of the Redondo Beach police. Because this is how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism. I can't even see my own insanity in this situation. But apparently the cops deal with a lot of people like me. And, and so they were just like, calm down, and whatever. They clean him all up. He's got a little weenie cut, but he's got to have stitches and he's too drunk to walk. So they take him by ambulance. And I don't know about your neighborhood, but, hook and ladder truck, all my neighbors were out front there. And my husband is a very friendly guy. He always has been. He knows all the neighbors. I don't speak to anyone because I am huge on anonymity. And, but, out comes Butch on the gurney. Hiya, Frank. Hiya, Joe, and all that. And there, Butch, what happened? Larcine pushed me down a flight of stairs. And everybody believes him. And why shouldn't they? Because all they ever see is easygoing drunk Butch and screaming banshee Larcine. Screaming nuts. So, we had another kid in all of this because there's not enough pressure here. I did all the textbook things that you hear in Al-Anon that I thought was so smart, so unique, so different. And you go to meetings and you talk to people and they have done the exact same things you have done, desperately trying to fix something I cannot fix. Because my happiness depends on what I think he's doing and how he's supposed to be doing it. The lie of the family disease of alcoholism. And somewhere in all that, after my second kid, I went to an Al-Anon meeting, and it was a great meeting, and they have the literature, and all that, but they don't have the piece of literature I want, which is how to get him to stop drinking and do what you want him to do. Because that's all I'm interested in, okay? But yet, sitting in that front row, Larcine, do you want your life to be different? Oh my God, do I want my life to be different? Larcine, what are you willing to do about it? Nothing, because it's not my fault. You fix him and I'll be okay. And again, the lie of the family disease of alcoholism. I'm the good guy. I can't even see my own insane behavior. I can't see how I yell and scream at my children all the time. Because you would yell and scream at your kids all the time, too, if you didn't have a husband who didn't show up. I'm angry with him all the time. He says how much he loves us and he cares about us, yet he constantly is spending entire paychecks in one night when our rent is due, when I need diapers, when I need formula, and we have no money because of that behavior. And like I say, all I know how to do is hurt him back. And every so often I hear a voice in the back of my head just saying, just don't fight, don't do it. Just let it go. Can you please just let it go? And I never can, because that's how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism. So everything that just starts out like this, I'm the one that escalates it. But it's really hard to see that when you're the good guy in the marriage. Because, see, I'm the one working. I'm the one bringing home a paycheck. I'm the one taking care of the kids. I'm the one doing all of that. It's very easy to convince yourself that you're the good guy. But I can't even see my own bad behavior. Because alcoholics, their behavior, it's obvious. It always seems so huge. My husband would lose entire vehicles. How do you lose things that weigh thousands of freaking pounds? It's just like, what do you mean you don't know where your truck is? And when I would say to him, where's your truck? You know what an alcoholic says back to you? What truck? Like he didn't have one. It's the absolute nuts. And again, how we're affected by the disease of alcoholism until I start believing it. One night I'm leaving him. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. He comes home. I'm sorry. Let's get a babysitter. We'll go out to dinner. We'll work it out. I'm not going to drink anymore. I promise. We go to the dinner. The first thing he does is order a pitcher or a glass of wine. About a carafe of wine. He orders a carafe of wine. I said, I thought you said you weren't going to drink anymore. He goes, this is wine. And then I'm questioning, is wine alcohol? Because they're so convincing. It's like they believe it, so I start to, and again, how I am affected by the absolute insanity of the disease of alcoholism. And, and just all of that garbage and gook going on. And then, and that was my Al-Anon career. I went, you didn't have the stuff, I didn't care. And then we were going to have this family reunion. It was his family reunion. My husband is one of 9 kids, the only alcoholic out of the bunch. Lucky me. And I make him raise his right hand and promise me that day he'll be sober so that we can go to this thing. And he promises, because I know when he promises me, he means to be sober that day. I know he means it with every fiber of his being. But that day comes, and guess who's so drunk and so loaded he can't even stand up. And I am so angry. And I'm here to tell you, no matter how drunk or blacked out my husband's been, he's never raised a hand to hit me. He's not that guy. He just isn't that guy. But that day I was poking him in the chest and I was egging him. Let's just take it to the next level. And I'm the sane person, the non-drinking person in the family. And all of a sudden I became conscious of our 2 little boys who at that time were 5 and 3 years old. And they're standing on either side of me and they're yanking at my pant legs. And I look down, big tears coming down their little faces. Mommy, Mommy, please stop yelling at Daddy. And I would like to tell you that I had a moment of clarity then, but I absolutely did not. What I started doing was I started screaming at those little boys. How dare they tell me to stop yelling at their dad when he's the reason our life is the piece of crap that it is. And by the time I get done screaming at these little boys, I watch my drunken husband walk out the front door. And I, the sober mom, say to the drunk dad, where do you think you're going? And the drunk dad turns to the sober mom and says, I'm leaving because we're upsetting the kids. And I don't tell you the story because I'm proud of it. I tell you the story because this is where the family disease of alcoholism took me. And I think I'm the good guy. Totally convinced of it. And then what ended up happening is, I don't know, a little while after that, my husband got arrested for drunk driving, which is no big deal because he got arrested all the time for drunk driving. And this is in the 70s. He always got released on his own recognizance. He always pleaded to, reckless driving. You pay a lawyer $1,000 and it's done. Nothing like what they do to you today. And so I don't know, maybe number 6 or 7 of, he got arrested for drunk driving. And that night he had a spiritual awakening. And I'm proud to tell you that right after that, he started going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and his sobriety date is July the 21st, 1979. He's coming up on 40 years of sobriety this July. And I'm really, really grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous because they saved the life of a really good man. And I always get teary around this little part. And I'm not a crier because you're not allowed to cry in the Army. And I've been taught that, so I'm not too much. But I never cry because you guys saved my husband's life. You actually ruined my plans, because he was supposed to die. But I always cry about that because I always think about if my dream had come true, my husband had died, and I was a widow. And I want you to think 40 years later, and I want you to think about that angry, angry woman raising those 2 little boys. And I want you to think about what kind of family you think we would be today. Maybe you need the alcoholic to kick you off, but boy, you don't need the alcoholic to finish you off if you suffer from the family disease of alcoholism like I do. And so anyway, then my husband, ended up getting sober. And you know how it is when they get sober. Holy mackerel, Andy. It's just like they go from being the scum of the earth to, I'm sober now. Give me the checkbook, and it's like, what? You're kidding me, right? And then they want you to read the big book, read the chapter to the wives, gag me with a spoon. I'd rather do that. And I went with him in the beginning when he went to AA to make sure he heard the stuff he was supposed to hear. But I'm like, crap, there's only 12 steps. How stupid are you? How long is this going to take? And he made it clear to me that AA was the most important thing in his life. And when my husband, got sober, he went through a hospital program. It was one of the very first ones that they ever had in the area. And but they didn't do any family, nothing. They told me I should go to AA Al-Anon meeting. I'm a rule follower. I went back to that meeting I'd been to like a year or two before. They saved the last 10 minutes for the newcomer. I raised my hand. I said, I was here about a year ago, and I asked you how to get my husband sober, and you didn't tell me, and I'm not going to tell you how I got him sober now. Because I really believed it was something I had done, and you know what they said to me at that meeting? Keep coming back. You better believe it. Because I want you to know, if you're ever at a meeting, AA or Al-Anon, and they tell you to keep coming back, it is because you've said the most asinine BS crapola. That's all they can tell you, is to keep coming back till you get your head out of your butt. I mean, there's nothing else going on, and they got nothing else for you, and and of course I didn't, and then what ended up happening is, my husband was sober for 2 years. I did not go to Al-Anon, and believe you me, everything I thought would fix me. He's a sober guy in Alcoholics Anonymous. He was working, bringing home a regular paycheck. He was a good husband, a good father, making up, doing his amends, doing everything he could to the best of his ability. And 2 years into it, I was as miserable as I've ever been in my entire life. Because his alcoholism, his recovery, his being a good husband, a father, a provider, all those things that I thought would make me happy and fix me didn't touch nothing. He changed, I didn't. And I just didn't know where to go with it. Nobody was more shocked about that than me. And one day I'm very, very task oriented. I have certain jobs, certain days. The motto in my house is there's no fun till the job is done. And again, that's all that stuff that just stays with you, that work ethic, and that my dad just pounded into us. And one day I'm doing laundry. And now the boys are big, of course, and they're in the living room with their dad. They're cutting up, and I hear them laughing and carrying on. And I walk through with the laundry basket, and dead silence. Because that's my gift to the family, boy. I suck the joy right out of the room when I step in it. Because that's all I know how to do. All I know how to do is ride you hard, because I'm so afraid if I don't, you're going to slip through my fingers. Some god-awful thing is going to happen. It's all going to go away from me. And all I know how to do is yell at it and scream at it. And I remember walking through that living room, hearing that silence, and I heard God's voice in my head as clear as a bell. And what I heard was, you've become your dad. Not with the drinking, but with everything else. The fear, the intimidation, the unhappiness, the just drilling them. They're never good enough. Whatever they do is never good enough. And I knew I was doing all of those things. And I don't think that God gives you such a horrendous message that he doesn't give you a solution as well. Because the next thing I heard is, this isn't who you are supposed to be. And I knew it for a fact. I knew it for an absolute fact. And so that's when I started coming to Al-Anon 2 years into my husband's sobriety. And I didn't come to get him sober, keep him sober. He was doing fine on his own. I came because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. When I went to that meeting, boy, it was like, right away, what do we do here? Because I'm a rule follower. You get the literature, we work the steps, we go to meetings, you get a sponsor, you be of service. I'm all over it. I have every intention of being president of Al-Anon at some point in time. I'm sure there's somebody doing it. Why not me? And, and that's when I started my sponsor with Jeannie, and going through the steps and doing the deal here, and this much every single day, but my life, over this past 37 plus years has just been absolutely remarkable. The things that have happened to me in Al-Anon, because it's not like, again, it's not this get out of jail card. You're always going to behave. Everything's always going to be good. There's a couple stories my sponsor always insists that I tell you, because again, she wants you to know how difficult I am, no matter how long I've been in this program. And the one has to do with my grandson being born. And, when my son was married and had a kid, and, or they finally got pregnant, and I was just so excited to be a grandma. I've never been a grandma before. Made a list right away. First thing on the list is be here when the baby's born. And, and this baby's due in May, and I got all these commitments in May. I'm going to be out of town every weekend in May. So my husband says to me, well, you might want to get out of those commitments if you want to be here when the baby's born. And I'm going, I'm not getting out of those commitments. Those are Al-Anon commitments. I'm keeping those commitments. And then my husband says, well, then you might not be here when the baby's born. And let me tell you, when the alcoholic is the voice of reason in your home, you are in big trouble, okay? Big, big trouble. And so he suggested I talk to my sponsor, but I'm not calling my sponsor because I got a plan, and everybody knows sponsors are plan busters, okay? They just have a way of shooting the best idea you ever had. A lot of holes in that. And so I don't go to my group and tell them either because they'll rat me out to my sponsor, so I go to God. God is a big thing in my life today, and I was brought up with absolutely no spiritual nothing. I mean, I wasn't. My dad always said he was going to hell, and we were his kids, and we were the spawn of him, so we were the spawnettes, and he was taking us to hell with him, And again, all the crap he used to tell us as little kids, and I had no God, but again, coming into Al-Anon, and again, having a meeting specifically for me, so I could find a God of my understanding. And when everybody was done sharing at that meeting, I remember my friend Crazy Jean said to me, Larcine, can you find a God, of your understanding? Because without God, it's a spiritual program. Without that spiritual connection, you're not going to get anything out of this. And I said, oh, Jean, I really appreciate everybody doing what they did, but I don't believe in God, blah, 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 blah. And Jean said to me, Larcine, why God gave you ears. And I knew he was going to be sarcastic. So I said, so everybody can hear, so I can hear whatever you guys are trying to tell me. He goes, well, in most people's cases, that's true. But in your case, God gave you ears so you could hold on to your head while you hold on to your ears while you pull your head out of your ass. And then he went on to tell me, because, Larcine, there's a big difference between can't and won't, And there's a huge, huge difference there. And you better go figure it out. And I remember going home that night, going out in the backyard and going, hey, God, it's Larcine Gantner. I gave him my address and my phone number because he don't know me and I don't know you. And that's exactly what I said to that God. But Jean tells me I can't do this without a spiritual connection. And that's all that happens here. This much willingness to try something a little bit different if you want to have the shot at a good life. But anyway, so I'm having this grandbaby, so I go right to God. Okay, God, I do a lot of service, okay? All right, we're just talking to God. And, I know I'm not supposed to ask for specific stuff, but I'm not asking for shoes or a car or job, money, no. I'm just asking that a baby not be born on the weekend, okay? I can make my commitments, no baby on the weekend, everybody's happy, okay? And I remember seeing God, you got it, it's just, you just know. You know when you're doing God's will, okay? You just do. And so I was really comfortable for that, and I do all my commitments. Last commitment I have in May, and I call my daughter-in-law Friday morning, if everything's fine, no, not even a pinch of nothing. Friday night I'm at this dinner, my cell phone rings, and the baby has been born. I am so pissed, I can't even begin to tell you. I'm telling nobody look at that baby, nobody touch that baby. I am just like livid. And I'm at this conference, oh, we're so happy to have you. And I'm like, I hate you people, And of course I don't say that because that would never be there, but that's what I'm feeling inside. But I have tools. I excuse myself from the room. I go out, I call my sponsor. I am quitting Al-Anon. This sucks. I ask God for one little bitty baby, not to be born on the weekend. Do I get it? No. And I'll never forget, I'm in so much pain. My sponsor says, I'll have to call you back. Oh, gravy, gravy, gravy. Thank you. And I don't think it was 2 minutes later, and my cell phone rings, and it wasn't my sponsor. It was my sponsor's sponsor. Now, I'm not sure how it is here in Redding, but in Southern California, when your sponsor calls you, you have crossed the line, okay? They're bringing in the big guns to reel you back in, and I'll never forget her sweet, sweet voice, and hi, Larcine, it's Charlotte. Now, I know better than to yell at her, so I go the other way. I start crying. I really want a baby. When a baby's born, it's not fair. And then I'll never forget her saying, Larcine, a beautiful thing just happened. You became a grandmother. And because you made up some ridiculous rule in that head of yours about how this was supposed to go down, you're going to take this beautiful event and turn it into a piece of crap? And I end my conversations as I often do, never mind, because again, I've been coming for a long time, but again, that thinking is just always there because I want it like I want it like I want it. But I take it to you, you show me a different way to look at it, and I get the shot at a good life. And now what I remember is I remember my husband picking me up from the airport on Sunday, taking me to the hospital and holding that beautiful baby boy in my hands. Because you guys gave me the opportunity to change my attitude and take the shot at a good life. And instead of that being the awful day that my grandson was born, today it's the best day ever, and stuff. And that kid's going on 16 years old now, but I did get a granddaughter on a Wednesday, okay? Your higher power's coming through for you, just in his time, his way, okay? But it's going to happen, because you are of service. And then the other story I want to tell you real quick is about my son Earl. And again, how grateful I am to Alan on. When he was 12 years old, I came home from a meeting, and my husband told me that my son had dropped acid, and he'd never done anything at all, remotely anything like that. And I mean, I'm freaking out. And my husband's like, no, he's okay. He's drinking some milk. He's listening to Mozart, because apparently my husband knows what to do when you drop acid. I have no idea what you're supposed to do. And he says, just leave him alone. We'll handle it tomorrow. But, I'm in Al-Anon quite a while, then I'm not leaving it alone. Okay. Not leaving it alone. And, and I spent the whole night, and he still loves to tell this story, because apparently when you're on acid, having your mother in your face all night long going, is this what you wanted to have happen? It's quite traumatic, and I really don't care. I hope it was a horrible night for him, because it was a horrible night for me. And I told him, you cannot just drop acid. I have been to AA. You got to start with marijuana and work your way. I mean, it's bad enough you're doing it, but that you're not doing it in order was more than I could handle. And I'm telling you, that kid took us on a roller coaster ride. And I remember being at our South Bay Roundup, and Earl is 19 years old. I'm 15 years in the program. And this kid's having a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol, kicked out of school, all kinds of crap going on. And I'm terrified for this kid, because what's the worst that can happen? They can die, and they do. And I've been to more funerals than I care to be, because alcoholism is absolutely relentless when it comes to that. And so anyway, I come home from the South Bay Roundup, and you've been at a conference, and love's coming out of every orifice of your body, and serenity and all that stuff. But I'm very disciplined in everything I do, and I'm very disciplined in my exercise. And now I haven't exercised for 3 days, so now I got to do 72 hours worth of exercise. I can check it off my freaking list. And so I go out to my treadmill, and next to my treadmill is my son's weight bench. And on weight bench is a driver's license. It's a woman's driver's license. It has information. She lives in Glendora, California. Her birth date's on there. She is 32 years old. I decide in 10 seconds or less, information from nowhere, that she has been in the house with my 19-year-old son, wants to marry him, has 2 kids, and call me mom. I am all over this story, okay? I run in the house, and I show my husband the driver's license, and nothing, because he's got no imagination whatsoever. His is a driver's license. No, it's not, and I tell him what happened, and he's like, you're out of your freaking mind, call Carol. Carol's my sponsor. So I called Carol, and I told Carol what I thought happened, and Carol rarely gives me direction, but that day she told me to shut up. She goes, you know what? I know you're afraid for this kid. And I know you are. She says, there's enough crap going on in his life without you making up more garbage. And you know what? It takes just as much effort to pray for him as it does to think up bad crap. So why don't you just pray for that kid instead of thinking up more crap in that head of yours? And again, never mind. And, as it turns out, I don't see my son for a couple of days because of my work schedule, his drug schedule. And he walks in the kitchen 2 days later with the driver's license. He says, Mom, what do you do with the driver's license? Well, I don't tell him what I do with a driver's license when you find one, because, again, it's a very bad example of somebody, because that's what he said. Mom, what do you do when you find a driver's license? Well, I didn't tell him what I did. And, but again, what I got to learn over and over again, because that kid had a hard road to go. I mean, we had to ask him to leave our house. It's not always fun choices. Just because you're making the right choice doesn't necessarily mean it feels good. But you got to pray about it, and you got to make the best choice that you can. But what I learned in Al-Anon and the most grateful for is that my sponsor, my meeting, everybody, when it came to that kid, unconditional love. My sponsor made me look up unconditional. You know what it says? No conditions. It's pretty cut, dry, and simple. And the truth is, there's nothing that kid could ever do that could make me not love him. Not a thing. But unacceptable behavior was unacceptable behavior. So he could come to our house when he could be sober. And that meant sometimes he could come for Christmas, birthdays, sometimes he couldn't come at all. Sometimes he could come and just stay but for 2 minutes, and he'd have to leave. But we always loved him. We always told him we loved him. We always told him we were proud of him, that he was our son. And I'm so, so grateful for that. And, and like I said, he had a hard road to go. But again, I used to say to my sponsor, how am I supposed to be happy, joyous, and free when my kid is out there suffering? And then I'll never forget what she told me. She says, if you're not happy, joyous, and free, then, that's the example you got to set for that kid. If you're not those things, then he has no example of that. And that's your responsibility to show that. Because God wants you to be happy, joyous, and free. And what are you doing to honor that? And it's not dependent on what someone else is doing, no matter how much you love them. And so we were always that way with that kid. And then when he was 36 years old, he finally turned himself into Alcoholics Anonymous. And this past August, he just celebrated 5 years in AA. And I am really, really grateful. I am really, really grateful because it's wonderful having a sober son. But, to all the parents out there, I don't want you to think my son got sober, because his mom's going to Al-Anon, his dad's in AA, or any of this other kind of stuff, or God loves us more than you, or you need to learn a lesson, and we already learned ours. There are no lessons. There's none of that crap. Don't let anybody tell you that stuff. My son got sober because he accepted God's grace in his life. I got in Al-Anon because I accepted God's grace in my life. To me, the program is available to everybody who's willing to accept that. God's grace is available to everybody who walks the face of the planet. But it's our individual responsibility to accept that grace, and then what do we do to honor it? I hope you guys honor the grace that's been given you. Thank you so much for having me.
I would like to thank the readers, Roneen, Aisha, and Rick.
We hope you enjoyed this recording. If you are interested in other speaker tapes or CDs from AA or Al-Anon, please contact us at Sound Solutions, toll free 1-877-893-2777, or visit us on the web at soundsolutionsrecording.com. We are also available to cover your recording and sound system needs. Thank you for allowing us to be of service and carrying the message.